Hello, hello, or welcome back, Leading Women in Tech. It's time for a very special episode. You may remember back at episode 200, I invited three extraordinary women onto the show, Allison, Lindsay, and Jen. Well, I wanted to get them back. At the end of episode 200, we knew there was way more to dig into. In particular, something that resonated with all four of us was the conversation around burnout. So today, we are having a deeper conversation about burnout. We're going to show you the raw reality of burnout, what it means as a woman in tech to experience burnout, the different ways we deal with it, and how sometimes that backfires and how sometimes it allows us to learn something about ourselves. This actually made me think differently, having this conversation with them. Even though I've coached all these women, they've worked with my coaches extensively, and yet actually as having this conversation as a group really shows me the power of what it means to get a group of women together, which is why I do what I do, and explore a topic in detail. So do yourself a favor, get yourself a favorite cuppa, get a pen and paper or your favorite note-taking tool, get ready to take some notes for some ideas, and settle in for a great episode all about burnout. Welcome to the show, ladies. It is fabulous to have you back after what was a spectacular episode in episode 200. So thank you all for joining me again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Glad to be back.
It's exciting.
Yeah. We left episode 200. I didn't intend when we recorded episode 200 that we would do a follow-up, but we all left that thinking we need to do a follow-up on burnout specifically. There are so many topics I know that we all wanted to cover again, but burnout was one that we all felt was something we deserved to spend more time on. So that's what we're digging into today. It's obviously been a while, but I want to, first of all, just do a little bit of a recap for those who haven't listened to episode 200 recently. Let's do a brief recap on your background, who you are, why you came to work with me and my team for coaching. And just really give us all a bit of a synopsis about who you are. Let's start with Allison.
Sure. So when I came to you for some coaching, it's because I've gotten to that point in my career where I feel like I have a really great foundation of executive presence in my role as a consulting manager for software. And it's a very male-dominant field, and I needed kind of specific support around how to show up as an executive woman leader in tech. And that's kind of where I've been focusing, refining myself in my career.
That's a biggie, and I think so many of us can relate to that story. There is just a different way we have to show up. What our male peers do does not work for us, right? It's different. I feel like a broken record. I say that almost every day.
Yep.
What works for our male peers, the role models that are around us, doesn't work for us. It backfires, if anything.
Right. So I wanted to use how do I use that as a superpower instead of as a downfall?
Yeah. It is a superpower. 100% a superpower. Jen, what about you? Give us an update on being here.
All right. Yeah. So I came to Toni and Lit Up Leadership Academy after I had a really interesting work situation. And let me get my little gamer set back on. Had a really interesting work situation and kind of knew something had to change. And so thankfully I see this LinkedIn pop up and I'm like, let's click, let's have a call, talk to Toni. And it was like, you needed this yesterday. And I really believe that was true. And so, joined Lula and got my world rocked. And it helped me become, as someone who has an MBA, who's worked in operations and IT for several years, it was like, this gave me the pieces that I think were missing. Like if there was a couple puzzle pieces missing, the executive presence, how do you show up for your team, how to show up for yourself, and advocate and know what's your deal, what someone else's. And, all of that today, it translates into for where I am today. It's, and into this conversation. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. It's just living my best entrepreneurial life, trying to practice what we talk about in Lula and trying to practice that and giving myself the space. So before I keep going down that rabbit hole and take away, we're going to get to all of it. So I'm excited.
We are. I think that showing up for yourself, not just how you show up with your team, that is a huge chunk of what we're talking about today, right? And yeah. Oh, we're going to go there just a moment. Lindsay, though, last but not least, would you like to introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am Lindsay Colzer. I am an engineering leader, a learner, a systems thinker. I'll go very brief, a collaborator, and a connector of ideas, people, and systems. And I love nature. I'll say that because I think this is relevant in how I think about things as ecosystems. I came to Toni's team for coaching support in a moment of more extreme burnout than I had experienced. I've always had ups and downs in my career of like stress and life. And what I didn't realize in this specific example was that there were some things that were going on outside of work that I thought were related to work that was causing some of this burnout. So I've always put a lot of pressure on myself as a leader of people in complex engineering systems and how I think about my work and life. And burnout has definitely been, I can think of several times where I've experienced it in pretty big blows. And when I came to Toni, I think I was melting down in my first conversation with you because I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is the moment. And so coaching was a great way for me to explore this space, really understand myself with Toni's team, amazing coaches, to really like help myself understand what was happening in this moment for me in my life that was related to work, but also was compounded by the interconnections of other things that were going on outside of work. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I don't know if you three of you know this, but I remember every single one of our first conversations for the three.
Did we all cry?
Oh man.
No, I don't think all three of you did. I think two of you cried. I think two of you cried.
I don't think I cried.
No, I think there was anger and frustration there instead. It tends to go one of two ways: anger and frustration, or tears. And
we'll get to that too.
Three. Oh yeah.
My frustration comes out in tears, so it's gonna be crying for me.
I mean, I always view I said this to my team recently, like if I have a conversation with somebody, their first conversation, and they end up in tears, I feel like I have done my job. And they're like, oh my God, that's horrendous. And I'm like, no, if they can cry in front of me or get angry in front of me, whatever like that emotion is, that means we're getting to the real problem. Like if we aren't getting to the real problem, like, okay, I can help you, but like with what? So I view tears as one of many signs of success, because that means we've really got to the bottom of it. And I think for some people, like, really? That's normal? Yes. In the work we do, it's not unusual. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's just frustration and all those emotions. And it comes out for different people in different ways. But never be afraid to cry. If you're listening to this, don't be afraid to cry with a coach. Just don't. You can't cry with a coach. Who can you cry with? But let's talk about burnout. I want to start with, I'm going to go straight to Lindsay, as straight away you were talking there about what was going on. Can you give us an example of a time you experienced burnout? What were the signs that indicated you had reached burnout? Maybe you didn't know them at the time, but you do now. That's what I really want to dig into with the three of you. So Lindsay, kick off.
Yeah, I think it's hard to go back to certain times of when I felt burnout because I think about it differently now, right? Over each time, I think I've really like overcome understanding what was happening. So it's hard to talk about in that moment, what was I actually feeling? But I'll try here. So the way that I think about burnout is that it's like this unmanaged chronic stress situation of fight or flight that I really can't get out of. And when you think about the moment of burnout or the experience of burnout, it's like you're depleted of energy. And for me, what has happened to me in my career is like this constant like negative loop spiral. Burnout shows up for me differently. It is fueled by different things that are going on in my environment and also within me. So like self-doubt is definitely a cause of burnout for me. So figuring out ways that I can overcome and see like the confidence that I should be having in some of the things that are going well versus not always focusing on the negative. But when I started to feel like I was burning out, it was really like that the realization that the triggers of emotions and fatigue were quick. They were happening almost immediately. Like I didn't have the ability to be resilient in those moments to overcome something. So that's how I knew I was going down the burnout track. And now I try to do things to like manage that stress all the time. But there are still moments when I can feel myself going really quickly down that negative loop spiral. And then those are moments for me to take a step back and do something that isn't like the small micro adjustments of stress management. It is a bigger, I need to do something bigger now. Yeah. So that's a quick little synopsis of, I think, how I think about burnout.
Let me just interrupt this episode for a second. We just talked about self-doubt right there. Here's what I want you to do. If you are listening to this and you're struggling with self-doubt and maybe it's contributing to your burnout, do yourself a favor. I have a free course called Ditch the Self-Doubt. It's all about self-doubt, imposter syndrome. If this is what's holding you up, go check out this free course. Head over to tonicollis.com/DTSD for Ditch the Self-Doubt. Link is in the show notes. Do yourself that favor. Get started today, completely free. Go and look after yourself. Step away from burnout. All right, let's return to the show. Yeah, I really resonate with that unmanaged fight or flight that is just taking so much from you. I would love to hear. Let's go to Jen next. Does that resonate with you? Would you say it's different for you? How's it show up?
Yeah. So I think for me, like I feel, coming out of burnout in a sense, but it's also like, for me, my career has been, being put into roles, which I'm very thankful for, had been very thankful for. I'd get promoted and into this next field. But at the end of the day, I had no clue I felt like I didn't have any clue what I was doing. And I'd get into these roles and it's like, oh, be director of this. Oh, that's great. Can I do it? Yeah, sure. But then you get there and you're not supported. You really don't know what you're doing. I had to learn what a server was. Didn't know that. But here I am leading a team and reporting out. If I say reboot the box again, don't know how to do that. But here I am. And the whole point of that is like someone saw potential in me, what I was thankful for. But then I get into a role and there's no support. The emotion and fatigue. I'd get on calls at 7 a.m. ready to go off the top rope, which part of me craves that. Like I'm a high performer. I like that. So for me, like the burnout is like how much change and chaos can I create because that feels stable, right? How do I seek that out? Or can I get that? And it shows up in my personal life. But those are signs, I think for me, like kind of that's really resonated was being put into roles that someone saw potential in me for, but then not being supported and having to FITFO. And, that's great once, but when you're figuring it the fuck out 5 times, it's a little daunting. And it's like, I can't do this anymore. And even in roles, even in my last role, it wasn't hard per se. It was easy. And that was hard, right? It was like, that's the part of the burnout. It's not the complex, I'm working 80 hours a week. It's people putting you in a box and saying, this is only what you can do. This is only what you could take care of your team. That's all I want you to do. Well, I'm sorry, but I've led global teams and I've done this. You want me to take care of grown men who can manage their own life? Like, give me a fucking break. Sorry, Allison. I'm a little bit emotional here. Like, it makes me angry. But that's burnout, right? And it's like,
it is,
yeah.
And it's that, and that's one thing I learned for Lula is like, that checking out, when you stop showing up as yourself and you start to check out and quiet quit, play the game, like stress. That is like, that I think was the most surprising part of the burnout for me. It wasn't the emotional, like
for me too, Jen. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's not coming off the top rope at 7 a.m. I'm ready. Hire me. I'm ready to come off the top rope at 7 a.m. I'm good. It was the like when I was willing to check out and just play the game and smile. That was like, I think when burnout really started. And that's kind of when I found Lula. So anyway, I'm like really more emotional than I thought I was going to be about this.
That's a good sign. This is an important, passionate topic. But Allison, you said that resonated with you. I think we're all nodding our heads on this one. So tell us more.
I mean, for me, definitely, I can handle stress. I can do hard things. I know that I've hit a burnout moment when I stop giving a shit. So like if I'm on a call and I am vocal and I am almost like yelling, I'm not like yelling actually, but when I'm, actively participating in the conversation and fighting for what I think is right, then I am doing what I love and I'm fighting the good fight. But you can only do that for so long. And then to your point, like I just shut down. I just, so like those, I've actually warned my manager, like if I'm not doing this, if I'm not yelling, you should be worried. You should be worried if I'm just sitting there being quiet and nodding my head, to your point. Like I have hit that trigger and that's it. That's it for me. I'm just going to sit here and carry on. I disengage because I can physically feel that the burnout has manifested and I'm done. I am exhausted and I don't want to fight for it anymore because at this point in our careers, burnout a lot of the time is not from workload. It's from lack of decision making, lack of direction, lack of strategy. It's from a lack of things as opposed to too much of something.
Yeah. I see so many people struggle with that I'm emotionally disengaged. Whether it's because I just don't love my work anymore and I'm just checking out, I'm just making money, or I've checked out because I'm quite quitting, I'm looking for a new job. Entrepreneurship is coming down the lane. Like all of those, whatever the reason is, you're done with this current role. The worst is when you're done with this current role and you don't have a plan. But all of those, I think, are the most awful kind of burnout because you don't expect it, because we're told burnout is about being busy, and burnout is not about being busy. It's about stress. And when we don't love our work, that is a form of stress that I don't think is recognized across society. Did any of you know that that was a form of burnout before you came and worked with me?
Mm-mm.
No. But it
Yes. I think so.
You did. Yeah, poor Lindsay. Like, yeah, but I got all the t-shirts.
There were so many things still that I needed to learn through Lula, though, because I knew that, but I couldn't get myself out of it because I was in such that like state of like, I cannot get my spiraling of negativity out of here. Like I'm too tired from it.
Well, for me, I didn't realize it until Lula, but then I put the pieces together. Right. Because then it was like, oh, because I had a job, I had an amazing manager, worked for a healthcare IT company, and it was great, but I didn't have enough to do. He was fantastic. Mm-hmm. I loved what I did, but like just based on kind of the ecosystem and what was happening in the IT world and mergers and all this stuff, like there wasn't new work for us to do necessarily. So it was BAU, which is like, do not ever put me in a BAU situation. This is not my jam. But there wasn't more work for us to like manage. And it was, so I love what I'm doing. But then it's like, okay, then someone reaches out. Are you interested in this role? Well, maybe I am. And then you're on to the next thing, because now this hasn't kept me occupied. And I even had a mentor who at that company I was at, I did a leadership development program. And she said, Jennifer, you've got this in order. You've got this stabilized. When are you going to do something different? Because you're done here. You've done what you came to do. And it was like, oh, well, most companies don't really want you to do that. They want you to stay in a role 2 years before they move you. And anyway, that whole like long drawn out story was really just to show when I didn't have enough to do, like that was a lot of stress on me and a lot of burnout, which led to me just kind of trying to make something else happen or looking at that next thing that came as an open door, looking at it as an open door. And then, holy shit, I'm back in the same situation with not enough to do, being micromanaged, and this is miserable. Can I even survive? And then that's a whole level of stress like I wasn't prepared for.
I think that's a really interesting one, actually, the micromanagement. So we're kind of going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but I think so many of us experience burnout from micromanagement. It's one of the reasons micromanagement is so toxic. But I think, genuinely speaking, like when people micromanage, they have no idea the damage it's causing in terms of stress. Or they think the stress that it's causing is valid because I'm making sure you do your job. And Jen just touched on this here. Micromanagement isn't really, the stress caused by it isn't making sure you're doing your job. The stress caused by it is you don't trust me and I haven't got enough responsibility and I can't own decisions, right? I just love to hear from Allison, Lindsay, does that resonate with your experience of micromanagement?
Yeah, I can't say that I've had to deal with micromanagement much in my current role, but because of previous roles and knowing what that looks and feels like, I think I've taken that as a leader to try not to be a micromanager, like actively monitoring myself and making sure that the folks who report to me have the autonomy to make decision making and the guardrails, but that I'm not in their chili, creating that burnout. So,
Lindsay?
Yeah, for me, it definitely resonates. It's about like trust and not feeling empowered. One of the moments of early burnout that I had in my career was when no one told me this, but when I was a leader, I was managing people. I viewed myself as a servant leader. I was there to empower people, help them have a bigger impact. I also wanted to have a bigger impact, and I wanted to like change things that were above me to support the things that were going on around me. And no one told me this, but my job was transitioning into more of a supervisor role. I'm like, this isn't what I signed up for, but I could feel it. People are like, you have to tell people to do their jobs. And I'm like, that is not. And the way that I phrase that is like, yes, people need to do their jobs, but also how they do it is theirs to decide, right? Like I have to give them the resources and the skills and the context and the decisions, the guides, so that they can do their job effectively. So yes, I definitely resonate with like that. I also think, just because I think it's important to say, the reason why someone's micromanaging you is probably because they're stressed out about something that you don't understand, and they don't feel trusted. And they don't feel empowered. And so really coaching can help you realize, what questions do I need to ask my upper management about why I'm not being given the resources and the tasks and the responsibilities that I need to thrive in doing the things that are going to be impactful for me.
That is so important to flag up. I'm so glad you did that, because I do think, you know, we can be so focused on our own experience without realizing whenever somebody micromanages. I've come across a couple of people in my life who said, micromanagement is good management. I'm like, no. But the majority of people know is not a good idea. It's a reflex of fear. And so when, as you say, Lindsay, when you can ask the right questions, it can really help. And actually, I found personally that helps me step away from my frustration and burnout, because I'm focused on solving a problem now, rather than focused on this person doesn't trust me, I don't have autonomy, which causes stress and therefore burnout. I can focus on how can I make this person more comfortable so I can get on and do the job I know I'm capable of doing. Is that something you've all tried when it's been, I know like you haven't all experienced the micromanager recently, but is that something that you think works?
I think so. I think even without micromanaging, that's a tact to almost protect yourself from burnout, like you said, is focusing on, okay, this person's asking a lot of questions that feel like we're not in a great space. I wonder what I'm not radiating that is causing that, or what fear they might be feeling around what I'm responsible for, that I could help mitigate, which if you can get to that place, or if you can ask the right questions back, then maybe you can stop the loop and save yourself. But also those types of things can drive you to burnout as well, is, you know, constantly guessing what everyone around you is trying to get to, when people aren't communicating and aren't being clear about what it is that they need. So it's, you know, a double-edged sword there.
100%. Okay, I want to change tack a little bit now and talk about what you've tried previously to tackle burnout, what didn't work, and also what you now try or use on a daily basis even to tackle burnout. Like looking at what you'd have done in the past that perhaps wasn't serving you, but maybe did some good, maybe no good at all, versus what you now know to do today. Let's start with Jen, I think, on this one.
You know, one, I think for me, it's understanding where I'm at emotionally. Am I trying to create change in my life? That's a telltale sign that something's up. Sitting in the place of being just still and present with myself, which is super hard. It's when there's opportunities that do come. What do I like about this opportunity? What do I not like? Do I respect the person that I want to work with? Yes or no? Big deal for me. Don't respect you. Don't want to work for you. I already know that. It's like, I've learned that now. And it's, if I feel desperate in any form or fashion that this job has to be it, then I know that I'm not ready. And it's like, I'm not excited, and those are some things like, it's really just a lot of self-awareness of, and then it's also, am I checking out at home? Am I just like, am I taking care of myself? I guess that's the best way to say it. Like internally, am I taking care of myself? And one of the things too is like, am I rephrasing, the season that I'm in? I've earned X. I've earned the opportunity to do this. I've earned the opportunity to take time versus, oh, well, I have time. Well, I earned this actually, and it's kind of all of those things. It's managing the expectations I have on myself at home. I am working, but in a different capacity, and I'm home all the time. Does that mean I have to do these things that they expect women to do? No. Newsflash, you don't.
Yep.
So it's all of that stuff. It's, for me, managing burnout now, or coming out of it, I'm going to say managing it, is the self-awareness, understanding where I'm at, giving myself space, not rushing things. That's, I think, where I'm at with it, and being okay. Like, and it's hard. It's hard to sit here and like, I'm good. I want to go fight fires and I want to make change and I want to help drive your strategic direction. But at the end of the day, like, I can't do that if I'm not full. Right. And I can keep doing that. Like, I have a lot of energy there, but like here and like me, to be able to show up, like, that's what I want to have at the next role, is the ability to show up in a way that I'm like authentic to myself, that I can say, hey, actually, no, I don't want to do that. Or I'm going to challenge you, and it not feel like I'm going to lose my job, or not feel like, great, I'm going to be in marriage counseling with my boss now because we can't get along. Right. Anyway, not that any of those things have happened, but that's a long answer to how to manage it. I don't know. It's a work in progress. I don't have an answer, really. One size fits all. It's a work in progress. It's a day to day. And even talking about this, like, I didn't realize like how angry I was, and not even angry. I'm thankful because I had so many cool opportunities. I've met some of the best people, like, as I like video, don't show this one on LinkedIn. I've met some amazing people and had amazing opportunities and work with people all over the world. That is an awesome blessing. But then it's like, at the same time, it's, if you saw potential in me, why didn't you help me? Right? Yeah. Why did I have to pay out of pocket for executive coaching? Why did, you know what I mean? And it's not their fault, but it's like those questions you ask, and it's like, wow, I really need to deal with those questions and need to deal with that feeling, because I don't want to like take that baggage in to somewhere else. And I don't want to take that, and I don't want to also set myself up, the fruit of a company is in its data, it's in its people. I have a lot more questions I would ask this time around versus I have before, because I don't want to get into a situation where I'm recreating all of this. And so anyway, work in progress. There's a lot. So obviously I still am going through it.
I think so many of us are, and we oscillate. Okay, I want to come to Allison next on this question, because I've got a special follow-up for Lindsay in just a moment. Just heads up, Lindsay. No pressure.
Look alive.
No pressure. But Allison, what about you? Like, what have you tried in the past? What are you trying now? What have you learned about how to handle burnout?
Sure. I was a big fan of using denial and avoidance as my mechanism.
Just keep going.
Burnout. I'm not burned out. That's just a buzzword. I'm just tired. This is a hard thing. We'll get through it. I'll just go for a run. I'll just, go do a kickbox class. Whatever it might be, but like, it's not burnout. So, really and truly just kind of avoiding it. So the biggest, I think, leap for me has been, I'm in general a verbal processor. So actually having conversations around, what I'm feeling, and those conversations can be with a trusted work friend who totally knows the characters in your work life and can be empathetic, or it can be just a really good friend who knows you and your triggers outside of work and can almost be the sounding board for, are you hearing yourself right now? Right. So it's that pulling together that, don't just pretend it's not happening. To your point, Jen, listen to yourself, listen to the things that you're saying, look at how you're showing up at work and at home, and try to really unpack that. And for me, I have to unpack it verbally, just so that I can hear myself saying the things. So, call your therapist.
Yeah. My friend I reference a lot is my therapist.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I just this week, my coach, she does this thing where she will write down verbatim what I've just said. And they say, Toni, you just said this. And I listen to it and I think, oh my God. If I had a client say that, it'd be like, klaxons, Toni's burnt out.
Right.
But sometimes you just need to hear it you need those words repeated back at you.
Well, and
to really get it.
Say one more thing is, when you recognize how it shows up for you, for me, the easiest way to see it now that I've got these dots connected is boredom. Am I bored? And so now I can sit here and say, oh, I'm bored. There's more questions behind that. What's really going on, right? So I can see how burnout shows up for me. And even, is it a discipline issue, right? Am I not having some self-discipline that I could have? Not a driving, I have to do this thing, but there's some other things there that then I have to ask myself, what's really going on? You're bored. What's happening? And those are things that I can see now, that even as I'm walking through this, when they peak up, when they kind of come up, it's a way to say, okay, am I bored or am I discontent? Am I frustrated? Am I sad? Am I, didn't think I was going to be where I was, or am I not giving myself a break? Right. And then it's how do I take that, give myself permission to ask myself those questions and then get the real answer, Yeah. That's the big thing I think now to walking through it is just knowing what the sign is and then asking myself those next questions. Okay, Jen, are you really bored? Or are you just not wanting to deal with something? Which is usually the latter.
I think I see a lot in many of us, when we are burnt out, we flip-flop more. We'll start doing 10 things rather than one. We won't focus. We won't complete things. We get distracted. It's the classic of walking into a room to do one task and doing 10 others and not the thing you walked in to do, right? We all see that. Some of us have it more than others naturally anyway because of things such as ADHD and the like, but it's there in all of us, actually, I've seen. And I think when we're burnt out, that manifests more. And I think it's kind of a really good... what's causing this? You might think I'm just tired, but why are you tired? It's a whole list to unpack. But I do want to come to Lindsay, because Lindsay, I want to ask you the same question. What did you used to do? What worked? What didn't work? What do you do now? But I want to add in there, your training as a coach, Lindsay. And I'd love to know, because I've been coaching for years. I train coaches. I'm training you, right? So as a trainee coach, how has your relationship with tackling your burnout evolved even further beyond just being coached?
Yeah. Okay. The little twist at the end is a good one to think about, not one that I would think about. So going into what things have worked, my tool belt is massive. It is I am a hoarder of all these different tools and mechanisms for how do I support myself through stress. But one thing that I just think about, there's two main aspects here that I think it kind of boils down to. There's one that's like your mentality, your mindset, which is where coaching comes in. That is such a significant part of what allows me to be resilient. Like if I'm not framing the situation in a way that serves me, how, like what exactly is happening here? What information do I need to get to understand what's happening so that I can like figure out how I can frame this for myself to move forward through it, whatever that is. And sometimes that's easier than others. If you're in a state of burnout, it's harder for you to have the energy to get out of that and think curious about what's happening. The other thing that's really important, and I think like the mindset is really the one that people really stick with, because, and coaching really helps because it can kind of like, I can self-coach myself. I can talk with other people and understand while I'm being coached, I'm self-coaching myself as well to like understand why I might be thinking about something in a certain way, what is going on at the root. And it brings more paths and avenues for me to go down. Do I want to seek therapy on this thing? Do I want to talk to somebody else about this thing? Do I need to take this action right now and just see what happens? Like, what is the next step? As knowledge workers, we're very much in our head all the time. That is our job. Like, right? This is where the power and the skill comes in. But we should not forget that we are physical bodies. And that is the thing that is the other piece here, which is probably even more important sometimes. I don't know if there's any like scientific research on this, but sometimes I'm like 30% of this is not going to be able to be taken care of if I don't take care of my body. Right. So like exercise, sleep. Like if I don't sleep, I'm not in a good spot. I know that. If I'm eating not well, I know it's not going to be in a good spot. And just generally activity movement is really important for me. If I'm not nourishing my body or taking in moments of like joy, like if my relationships are causing me some type of physical nature stress outside of work, I'm going to feel that back into work. So I think there's two big elements here that we sometimes forget. And coaching really helps with the mindset piece, but it can remind you that you are a human and there are things you still need to do that are not related to work. Your action does not need to be work oriented. It can be life oriented. It could be body oriented. It could be physical. Like, what is it? What do you need essentially inside of work and outside of work to take care of yourself as a human?
You know, Lindsay, it's funny, in our group session this week, you know how we do like a win and then a help. The win for one of the women in our session was having been to a yoga class every day for the last 3 weeks. And it's like, oh, I never even thought of counting that as a win because, you know, yes, that's something that's big for us outside of the workplace, but it also folds into how we show up at work, like you just said. So it was a good like reminder that these things all come together.
And yoga is so good because it's also mindset, right? Like you're being very attentive to what's going on in your body, which is taking you out of whatever that stress response is. And it's really funny, Allison, you were also talking about in those moments of burnout when you're avoiding things, you're like, I can do this. I'm going to go do kickboxing. I'm going to go do this. Like your body is naturally like, I need you to get this energy out, right? Like you need to distract yourself, like listen to it because it does help.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it, the way it shows up? Because the other side way it shows up is exhaustion, though, right? So some of it, I mean, I always say to people, if I can see this anxious energy, even just on a call, like just shaking yourself out like this, I'll get people like stand up and shake their limbs and they'll be like, oh, I feel so weird. And like, just go with it. And you do, just like using your muscles just burns some of that anxious energy, burns the adrenaline that's coursing around your body. That only works when you've got that anxious energy, you've got the adrenaline and cortisol. But sometimes it manifests as just exhaustion. I think this is the more insidious form of burnout. I'm not sure they're different forms. I think they just come up differently at different times of the day, maybe. How, I mean, I'm going to ask Lindsay this, but maybe the other two want to join in here. How do you deal with that exhausted burnout state?
For me, I think I'm still learning this, so I don't know if it's like emotional exhaustion. There's probably different types of exhaustion for me.
Yeah, I think so.
When it shows up for me, it is an emotional exhaustion. And sometimes that turns into me causing more of a reinforcing loop of more emotional exhaustion. Why is this happening to me? What? And I'm overthinking it. And I've been learning through like this coaching situation and being coached and going through this coaching certification is that sometimes I just need to sit with it. Just be okay. Like, accept the fact that I'm dealing with something right now and it will pass, and trust that that has happened before. I don't need to solve the problem. I just need to help my body get through that stress response, that emotional exhaustion response. And that is the mindset trick that can help you be okay with the fact that, like, I'm just really tired right now. And that is something I can overcome with time. It doesn't need to be fixed.
I think that acknowledgement of, I've done this before, I can get through it again. Like, okay, it shouldn't be used as an excuse to put up with stuff we shouldn't be putting up with. But equally, you're right. I think sometimes when we start dealing with burnout and mindset stuff, we're like, oh, I just need to find the magic wand for this one, and then this will go away too. And yay, there are just going to be times in our lives which are more stressful than others, right? We take on challenge, which forces growth. That is inherently stressful, and it's a stress that we choose. And it can be very easy for us to then, as you say, ruminate on it, wonder why it's creeping up now, and spend a lot of time going, I need to fix this, I need to fix this. When actually the kindest thing is to sit with it and be like, I'll be okay because I've been okay before. As I tend to, in that situation, if I notice that's going on, I will make an active decision to, like, and I'm not adding more. I'm so ambitious. I will always be adding more. And I'm like, no, it's time. It's time to, like, just sit with this level right now. Does that resonate with you all? Jen, you look like you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I do have something I want to say here. And that's something that I've just recognized. Exhaustion for me is a cover for sadness.
Oh, yeah.
And so in like my personality type, when I'm exhausted, there's a link to something I'm sad about. And it's like, that's something, it's like, there's the physical tired of being around people. And to me, sometimes that's like driving in the car with nothing on no music, no sound.
Yeah.
I'm just like sitting, like being with myself. But it's that sadness, like that's been surprising, because it's not necessarily I'm tired, but exhaustion.
Jen, this is why I like verbally processing, is because as you said that, it really resonated with me. And one of the things that I do often when I'm feeling really tired is maybe skip the kickboxing because I'm too tired, but go outside and go for a walk and just remove myself from my office, my home, my to-do list, and listen to music or listen to, a true crime podcast, because these are things that, like, make my brain just go somewhere else. So to your point, Jen, it's like, maybe you've had enough peopling. I mean, burnout can be such a spectrum, right? Like, it can be like the actual burnout that causes you to leave a job, or it can be just, well, that meeting was exhausting. I can't do that again. I need a minute. Or, like every single Friday, Friday is not a happy hour day for me, because I need to just go and sit and be with myself and, get to that place where I can finally come down from working throughout the week. So I really like that framing of, exhaustion can actually be sadness or disappointment or something else shining its way through.
I actually want to just touch on that piece there you said about needing that time on a Friday. It's not a happy hour. And I've always associated that with my introvertedness. Like, I get peopled out during the week. I'm done. At the end of the week, I'm done. I need to be completely just me, the husband, the kitty cats, no other humans. It'd be better even if the postman didn't come round to drop letters through the letterbox. Not that I have to interact with them, but, like, just knowing they're approaching the front door, Okay, yeah. I'm extreme. When I do these tests, I am so far down the introverted spectrum. It's like unbelievable. It's bizarre that I can show up for work every day. So I've always associated with that, but I'm not sure all three of you are introverts. I can't remember. I know we've chatted, most of us have chatted about it. It's not an introverted thing for you, Allison? Is that what you're saying?
I'm an extrovert.
Okay.
I will say with the shift to everything being at home and on Zoom, even even extroverts are struggling. Look out for your extrovert friends because it's different to be on a video all day long and having to figure out when to talk because you're going to talk over someone. So you start thinking like, okay, I love talking. And if I don't allow someone else to talk, they won't unmute. So, it's the whole experience has changed in that way. And we're generating like a whole different type of burnout, which is just in technology burnout. And the peopling is harder and different. And so by the time I get to Friday, I'm done peopling, but I just need like a hot second, because by Saturday I can talk with people in real life. But it's a nuance.
Yeah. Let's bring in Lindsay here because we haven't heard from you for a few minutes. And my impression, Lindsay, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're a bit more introverted. Is that true?
I don't know that I would label myself on this.
Okay, you don't have to. I mean, they kind of, they can be helpful
I think it
for some people,
depends.
but yeah.
Yeah, it really depends. If I definitely feel like there are moments when I need my own time to like fuel me up. And the way I think about this concept is it's a spectrum around where do you get energy from, by yourself or through other people, right? So it really depends. If there are people around me who are draining my energy, I want to get away from them, right? So like I need my own time. But if there are people who are filling me up and I'm like really energized by it, like that is a different dimension. So I think it really is personalized. But I love my downtime. I love work. I like community. If I'm in isolation at work, I'm actually not thriving. I am like, I don't even have an impact. Part of that is the feedback mechanisms. Like you don't know how you're interacting with people at work, and we're all interconnected. Like if I'm not collaborating with someone, and leadership is somewhat isolating in many ways, like you have to know how to like seek out people and connect with them to make things move forward. So I think it depends. It's always a depends for me, which is a very engineering thing to say. And all of my coworkers are going to laugh if they hear any of this, because the it depends is always like the frustrating, but also true statement of like the answer to every question.
So true. Okay, I want to ask one more general question before we move on to the quickfire round. And I mean, this might be a sort of quick question anyway, but I would love to know from each of you, what should we be doing as leaders to foster an environment that minimizes burnout and promotes well-being with our teams? This is the bit that we can do for those around us. Jen, I'm going to go to you first.
I think it's recognizing leadership's role in facilitating or creating burnout opportunities, or I'm going to say opportunities, burnout situations for teams. You can't prevent everything, right? But are you creating an environment as a leader where your staff is supported? They have the resources they need? Are you micromanaging them? Is the work that's coming in what they're good at, right?
That's a biggie.
That's a biggie. Like, is this really where this person should be or doing? Or is this task something that we can automate or like move on or hire an assistant for? Is this person? So to me, those are the ways that I feel like burnout like happened. So I think as leaders, you can't prevent all of it, right? Because it happens in our personal and professional lives. Like there's things that happen, but I think it's just awareness of how you perpetuate burnout in your teams. And it's not just like, do you have resources? Are you empowered? I think that would be the thing. Are you empowering people to do their job?
Yeah, I like that. I think that what really resonated with me there is the work that comes in a good fit for them. I think so many of us, burnout happens when we're doing work that's not aligned. I've quit jobs because I've been doing work that isn't aligned with me. I'm like, this is not my zone of genius. Why am I doing it? Lindsay, what about you? What do you think leaders should be doing more? What should all of us be doing more of to help with burnout, prevent it, and treat it? Treating it sounds a bit weird.
I think talking about it can help. I think like not putting a stigma on it. I think one of the things from this whole conversation that I'm gleaning from this is just the realization that we should all be talking about is that stress does not equate to burnout, right? Stress can be and should be a part of work because it's hard to work with people. And also when you're challenged to build new skills, it is going to be stressful. It is not going to be efficient. What is going on in the person's mindset when they're experiencing some type of level of stress can really turn to burnout quickly if they have a negative perception with stress. And I think there's good stress and there's bad stress. Too much of stress generally is bad, but like figuring out where those like mediums are. And I guess what I would just say is what leaders should be doing is really understanding their people, being attentive to the way they're approaching their work, not prescribing it, empowering them, showing them that you care about their growth, giving them the challenges that will support them, but also realizing that we're not all meeting expectations at every given point. It takes time to learn new skills. We need to be able to have a safe environment for people to be honest with us about what's going on for them so that we can put them in the right place, that we can put them in the right challenges, that we can have, so they can have the biggest impact, which essentially is a leader's job. Is like, if the people below me are having a big impact, I'm having a big impact, right? That's the goal there.
I love what you said about stress does not equal burnout. And I think that's what we've heard for so long is, oh, you're just stressed and you're burnout. Well, actually, I like having a little stress. I mean, it's creative. It is energizing, but it doesn't mean burnout. And I think that's the conversation is around burnout doesn't mean don't give me less work.
Yep.
Right. And it's like really talking about what real burnout looks like for people.
Yep.
And it's not just, oh, work fewer hours or here's less tasks. That's not the answer, you know?
Go for it, Allison.
For me, it's like, as a leader, I need to emulate the culture around that I want the folks who report to me or who are working on programs that I'm running to understand that it's something that I'm dealing with too, and let them see how I handle stress and let them see what sustainability looks like. Tell them, hey, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk. I need a minute. You could go for a walk if you'd like, right? Like opening the door for that. Or, you know what? Turns out I'm going to take tomorrow off. We have time off. It's a benefit in our job, and it's okay to use those benefits when we need to. So like promoting that culture of acknowledging stress and figuring out how to manage it, given the tools that you have, talking about it. It's okay to verbally process with me. I might be your boss, but I'm also a human being. And just knowing that, like, it helps me to manage you, like you were both talking about, around if I understand what triggers you and if I understand what energizes you. I talk a lot with folks around, you know, it's not necessarily your strengths and weaknesses that we need to evaluate. It's your energizers and those things that deplete you of energy that we need to talk about so that we can allocate workload. I mean, there's always going to be depleting work. It's a job. But like, if we can rally around things that are energizing and spend most of our time there, that can remove some of the burnout triggers too.
Yeah. 100%. I think one thing that has really struck with me, because so many people come to me thinking that hustle and busy is burnout. And I'm like, no. It's not. You can be super busy and not burnt out. You can also be doing nothing and be burnt out. And so this nuance of stress doesn't equal burnout is also really important, because burnout is stress, but not all stress is burnout. Burnout is stress. It is a toxic form of stress. I really want people to hear this. Burnout is stress, but stress comes in many, many flavors. And I was actually having this conversation with one of my coaches yesterday. We were talking about supporting a particular member. And we both talked about how her burnout is coming from, she's not taking on enough. She's not operating at her highest level of functioning because she's deliberately coasting right now. She's been coasting for 6 months. It was a deliberate choice. And both of us are like, yeah, we need to call that out because it's gone on too long and we can see her ebbing down. She needed to coast briefly. And now it's like, okay, now it's time to pick her back up again. It's one of the reasons I love the coaching that we do, because we have multiple coaches. As coaches, we get to say, what is the right thing for this client? And we see different things, and particularly this with the burnout. I love this, Lindsay, bringing in stress does not equal burnout. And then I would just add, burnout is stress, but stress comes in many, many flavors. And I think one of the things that has but burnout is stress. It's just, there's a big healthy circle of stress. There's a little bit in the middle that's burnout. Okay, let's move on to the quickfire round. I want the first thing that pops into your mind with each of these. These are different from my normal quickfire round questions because you've already done the normal ones. So I want the first thing that pops into your mind for each of these questions. We're just going to go quickly around the room, virtual room. And start with Lindsay. What's your favorite way to unwind after a stressful day?
Usually connection with my husband, my dogs, some type of person that is not work related, like trying to reach out to somebody I haven't talked to. It's a great way for me to unwind. Sometimes it's not like always valuable, but at least I'm putting in the effort, right? It's not like, for me personally, I put a lot of like weight and gravity around my work and have for my career. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm whole outside of work more to support the balancing and integration of what fills me up. So connection with other people is a great way for me to de-stress.
You are definitely an extrovert then. You are definitely, like, just the fact that is the way you get your energy in that situation is fascinating to me. That's a whole other podcast topic. In the strict definition, as you say, we all have like our extroverts, our introverts behavior. But anyway, sidetracking.
You said first thing in my head. Right now the sun's out and I want to go sit in it. So that's like another thing that like I'm like, let me just lay in the sun. That'll help me de-stress, right?
I love that. I love this. Especially it's been a very, very cold month around here. So I'm like, where's my summer? Allison, what about you? What's your favorite way to unwind after a stressful day?
I like to go outside and shake it out. So I like to go for a quick walk around the loop. Sometimes my family joins me. Sometimes they don't. I'm indifferent to their presence, but I would like to go move my body real quick. It doesn't need to be, a full-on workout, but just smell the air and be outside.
Love that. Smell the air. It does wonders for the soul. Jen, what about you? What's your favorite way to unwind?
The first word that came to mind was Bridgerton. Only because...
Why not?
But I will say this. Some of the things that stress me out are when things like aren't in order. And I'm not talking about like the counter being like, so sometimes that's a good de-stress for me is to like get things in order, or hey, pile of clothes that's been sitting next to my nightstand that I just moved from one pile to the next. Some things like that, to be honest, like it helps me, like those create stressors. So that's actually a way to like decompress because I don't have to think, I don't have to make decisions, and I just have to just be present, right? I don't even have to be present, so for me, those are good ways to like de-stress. And I love being outside too, because then I love the way I like just go take a nap out by the pool. And
sounds great.
We're going to Jen's house.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Come on, you guys.
I'm just going to applaud the two things there that really stood out to me, which is because we're all coming up with things that are very good for us, be with people, get some sunshine, go for a walk around the block, organize some stuff. I'm going to applaud Bridgerton, i.e. watching TV and sitting by the pool. Because I think sometimes we all judge ourselves like, I should be doing something better to recover. Sometimes those two things are just perfect. So I love that. I love that you got those in there, Jen. Because to me, like sometimes all I have in me is to watch some television. And I feel like I should know better. Sometimes that's all that's in. That's all I've got in my cup today. So I applaud that. Okay, this is a fun question. If you had any superpower that you used in some way to help manage your stress, what would that superpower be and why? This is a tricky one if you didn't. I did send you these questions before, but all of you look like, oh God, I didn't think about this one. Allison, you're nodding. Have you got an answer? What's your superpower?
Yeah, I think it would be to literally be able to sweat out my stress because as we've talked about, I do all kinds of activities to get rid of stress. During the pandemic, I bought a kickboxing bag and gloves. So like if I could go down there and do that and have it actually just like sweat out and be gone, that'd be great because it would go along well with what I'm already doing.
That's different and fun. Just like, I'm just going to turn on the stress dial right now. Like there's a sweat dial. I just like crank it up. Just like, let it
get a sauna.
Yeah.
Right.
Saunas, I find saunas very calming, bizarrely, which they're supposed to like raise your cortisol, but actually I find them calming. I'm kind of weird.
Hormesis, which is like the lower level of stress that we're talking about. It's good stress.
Yeah.
As long as you're not overdoing it. Don't cook yourself.
Well, yeah. Lindsay, what about you? What would be your superpower?
This is really hard. And the first thing that came to my head here was like just being able to observe it, what was going on, because a lot of my stress is like internalized stress. It's like in my head. So if I could observe it better, which is really basically me practicing meditation and getting to that superpower of being able to just be objective about what thought goes into my head, which is really hard to do.
Yeah. Easy to say, hard to do. Something to work on as a coach, though, that self-coaching piece. Kind of awesome. Jen, what about you? Superpower?
Ooh, I'm trying to figure out how flying could make
I know,
the
right?
appropriate, right? Oh my gosh.
Flying.
Like I heard superpower and I just want to fly.
Well, so mine would be flying because I just love flying. I just love being up in the air, even though I don't like heights. I don't like looking down, but I love being in an airplane and looking out. Oh, I love that. And soaring, it just feels so freeing. So maybe it's the freeingness of it.
Yeah, that could be it. Because I don't want to use flying to get to work quicker because that's more work. You know what I mean? But I think it's that freedom of just being able to like go in, be yourself, and leave. I'm out.
I look at the birds. We have so many birds around here. It's amazing. And sometimes on a lovely afternoon, I just sit outside with my lunch or something and just watching the birds swoop around. And they just genuinely look like they're having fun. And I'm like, when did we stop that as a species? It's that swooping in and out. And like on a windy day, a lot of them will just hide away. And there'll be like a couple of them that are just like, I'm just going to play in the wind. And you can see they struggle up. And then they're just like, whoomph, and they just allow themselves to get caught by it. And it looks like they're having fun.
Actually,
what a way to de-stress.
Yes, that actually, Toni, is perfect because I could get so intense and focused that I forget how to have fun. Like, listen, come on a trip with me. I will plan our day. And then it's like about hitting the plan versus like being present and having fun. So as 100% flying because that's fun.
What's the most unusual thing you've done to combat burnout? I'm going to say something very inappropriate, but I feel like I should share it because I feel like actually we all do this. We just don't admit it. And hey, our listeners are female. Sex. I have to say, I'm just going to be upfront about that. If I can't share that with this audience, then yeah. So I'm just going to say that one, just like break the ice there. See, none of you are going to come up with something more inappropriate than that, I'm sure. To share. I don't think that's inappropriate, but I'm sure somebody's going, really? She just said that on the podcast. Yes, I did.
It's real life.
Yeah, I know, right? It's great.
We already talked about mine. Because I tended to avoid the reality of burnout, I decided that I needed to buy an entire boxing set and thought that maybe at the end of every day, I needed to go kick some ass in the basement. It was an odd choice.
I became a Pilates instructor.
So was that because you were burnt out with work, or is it a way to cope? Was doing Pilates a way to cope? Or was it like...
I think I loved it. And then it was like, oh, well, if you love it so much, why don't you just become an instructor? And it's like, okay, well, I'm bored. So why not?
You say this, actually, and it is funny to hear you say it, but actually how many of the women I've worked with, and actually myself too, have reinvented ourselves because of burnout. I toyed briefly with the idea of becoming a wedding cake designer and baker because I made wedding cakes as a hobby for a while. And, I was okay at it. And I was like, oh, if I just did this as a job, I just quit. And actually, if I'm honest, it was a response to burnout. And the number of women I know who quit tech because of burnout, and they would just tell themselves, oh, I've always wanted to do this thing. And I'm like, and they come back 5 years later and I'm like, I'm not fulfilled. Well, yeah, you're not fulfilled because it's not as challenging, that thing you decided to do. So
yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, just kind of there's a funny meme I saw, like probably it was last July, June or July, and it said it's like some young person looking off into the space, and I always wondered why my boss left their corporate 6-figure job to become a Pilates instructor. And now I understand. But it's funny because it's like, okay, can I do this? And you try to reinvent yourself because of something that happened due to burnout. And it's, so the jury's, we're figuring out. I mean, I think that I know the answer, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Like when we take a hobby or something we've used, and can that really solve the problem? And probably not, but it's a nice way to feel in shape and through the midst of it.
Love it. Lindsay, what about you? What's the most unusual thing you think you've done to combat burnout?
When I've classified something as, I'll do two. The stress piece of like, how do I combat stress that I'm worried is going to turn into burnout? Because that is usually what I'm worried about, because I've been there, been to the burnout state, and I don't want to go back. There are things that I just try to do to like be in the moment. Like Allison was talking about, just like, what did you say? Something about the wind, like just like taking in the wind or smelling the air.
Smelling the air. Yeah.
Yeah. One unusual thing that came to my head of like, what can I do to like get myself into the present moment is I like to like, this is weird, stretch my toes out and just like pay attention to my toes. Right. Like just a weird thing. But in terms of like, what have I done? Burnout moments are like really like catalytic in that like they really, even though they suck, they really focus you on what is most important for you, at least in that moment. And for me, in the last couple of times I've had burnout, I've realized like I really need to have something that gives me meaning and purpose outside of work. And I don't necessarily feel like I always have that. So what I've been doing is like getting more involved in like my local community. I'm trying right now to work with some local conservation groups that do amazing work with like these natural land that has been donated to bring mountain biking communities into the area, because I like to mountain bike. So like that is something that isn't more an extreme, very unusual, but I'm like, I need to get more involved in something that gives me more meaning outside of work. So I'm not just thinking about work outside of work, which gives me burnout.
Love that. I love that so much. Okay, ladies, this has been a beautiful conversation, as always. Every time I speak to any of you, I'm like, oh, this is the best. Bringing you all together for this podcast for a second time has been an absolute pleasure and honor. And I really hope that having an open, honest conversation about burnout, its nuances, how it shows up for each of us, has given somebody, even just one person, permission to take a step forward to tackle their burnout in a way that's more healthy perhaps than they've done before. So listeners, as always, if this is resonating with you, do yourself a favor and do somebody else a favor. I would love it if you could share this with somebody that you think needs to hear about burnout. Think how many people we could help if we were all just having these honest conversations more often. Please do that favor for somebody in your life, and then do yourself a favor and ask yourself, what am I going to do today based on what I've learned? Do yourself that favor. And of course, if you need us, me and my team are here to help. These amazing women are actually in there in the community and delighted to chat as well. Part of what we do inside my programs is bring women in tech together. So if you would like to find out more about what we do, go check out the show notes. There's always a link in there to find what we do and book a call with me and my team. But until next time, remember, stay in your tech leadership game, follow your dreams, because the world really does need that uniqueness that you bring as a leading woman in tech.